Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our latest Stats Race Lens webinar. A absolutely enormous weekend ahead. Fairgrounds and Gulfstream, the Florida and Louisiana Derbies, and a lot riding not just on Derby points and the Derby gate, but also Oaks factors, the Fairgrounds Oaks, the Gulfstream Oaks. Lots of terrific stake action, terrific maiden race. Let's try that again. Did the introduction come through or not?
No, Steve. Go ahead.
I'll do it again. A huge weekend on tap. Florida Derby and Louisiana Derby. Terrific stake cards at both Fairgrounds and at Gulfstream Park. Craig Walker with us from Equibase and Stats Race Lens. Ellis Starr as well. And Ellis, of course, going back a few weeks for those that follow Uber Capper, laying out a 130-to-1 shot as a major exotics play, Sonneteer in the Risen Star. And we'll be looking for another one like that or maybe more as dug up on Stats Race Lens. Ellis, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Yeah, well, that was a lucky, one of the first Kentuckians I ever learned when I moved here 17 years ago was a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while, and I thought Sonneteer could get a piece. And I tell you, I got a hand to the jockey, really. Richard Aramia rode the horse, even though he had no shot to win, to get up for second. So people were nicely rewarded, and I hope I don't see any big giant prices like that here, but we were lucky. We did have, some nice prices before we had Gervin. I think last time I was on at 8-to-1, and hopefully we could do something similar here.
And without looking back too much, was there an element in Race Lens that led you to be clued in that Sonneteer at least had a chance to impact the pace lots?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, well, first of all, there was a hot pace, as we knew, with Uncontested, and I forgot Royal Mo, and one other horse was going to set up a pace, which benefited Malacacy, who was a stalker. And I believe in True Odds, sorting on pace style, I believe Sonneteer was a sustained horse with a decent closing figure, nowhere near the other horses, but we call that counter energy. It goes back to old Tom Brohammer, Dick Mitchell pace scenario where you've got a pace tool. You're looking for any horse that really isn't finishing that fast, but he's slowing down a lot less than the rest. So that's what happens.
Well, and that's sometimes all it takes. And finding horses like that, and then you have to win a photo and you have to bet it right, but being willing to play horses like that, that's a big part of this exercise. Not just finding them, but setting it up right when you make your wagers. Craig Walker, good evening, and anxious to get into these two tremendously deep cards, a 15-race card in New Orleans, a 14-race card at Hallandale Beach, and we'll start it out talking about that maiden special weight at Gulfstream in the 6th.
Yeah, well, since the emphasis today, Steve, is really on pedigree, and there are some pedigree angles we'll be talking about in a while on the Louisiana Derby, of course. But I want to talk about some horses here that had some interesting pedigree stats. Both are second-time starters, and I'll be honest, I don't think we covered it on any of the shows, but they both come out of the same race on March 4th, and I tabbed them both on Stats Race Lens angles first time out. The first is the one time to travel. When I look at first-time starters, one of the angles I always like to look at is the dam statistic. As you can see here, the research for today's horse, which in this case is lifetime Derby sprints. But I went back, especially when a dam has limited starters, in this case 3, I like to see who they are. Now, as we discussed many times, there are a number of templates you can set up here. I already have one set up that says dam first-time starters, and that just gives me a quick look at who they are. And saves me having to look at any pedigree or anything else in other sources. I'm right in Stats Race Blend. In this particular case, I just need to click on it. It'll show me the horse's names. And right away, a horse jumps out at me, a horse named Hard Not to Like, who was the only one of the dam's starters to win first time out, and it was 6 furlongs on the turf. So now I want to go back and I want to look and say, okay, Hard Not to Like's pedigree or what she did in her career. I know she's a filly. And you can see right away she earned $1.2 million for those who don't remember her. And she was a multiple stakes winner. But I'm going to go all the way down. You can see what I did here by clicking on her name. I was immediately able to pull up her lifetime PP. And that's very cool to help you understand whether that horse's first or second or third start or whatever race is similar to the day is one you can find in the PP. So first time out, it was 6 on the grass at Woodbine, and she won nicely. Everything else was long after that, including, as we know, a number of stakes. She won the Marsha's River, the Sewanee River, the Marsha's River at Gulfstream, and then she went up here, and of course she won 1, 2, 3 stakes in a row. The Endeavor, the Jenny Wiley, she's a Grade 1 winner, and then she ran badly back here in the Matriarch, November 15th, and retired. But Time to Travel does have a sprint pedigree. So going back to the horses race itself, back here we just switched back to the PPs, and we're back on Time to Travel from that race on March 4th. And you can see in this case, first of all, an 88 Equibase speed figure. We'll compare that in a second, but I'll tell you it's very good, except for the favorite Meantime. But this horse broke 9th and rushed up a little bit to 3rd, ran very gamely the whole way, got passed by Fairgrounds, who we'll get to in a second, at 69-1. And you could really expect some improvement physically and mentally by Time to Travel. But this is a pedigree play as well as an improvement play. The other horse that was a pedigree play in this race is Fairgrounds. And for those that don't recognize the name, Lana Kim, this is an easy one. I'll do the same thing really quickly here. Go to Lana Kim. Again, I set up a query for first-time starters, which is really easy to do. I'll just show people how to do it. You go to Modify, and you name it what you want, and you just turn everything to all except for first-time starters under days between starts, and then you have your query and you save it. So when I go back to the individual research, I look at the horses' names. Well, I see Rachel Alexandra, I see Dolphus, and if I want to remind myself in case I didn't know who they were, I can go to view all horses' PPs, and they're all there. And Dolphus broke his maiden at first asking, 2 races waiting, won an allowance race, won a second level allowance, ran 4th in the stake in March, and I think he's probably still in training. Vic, of course, we know we'll get to. It shows 2 horses at a time, so I'm going to switch to Rachel Alexander, who we know, of course, what she did. She won her second time start and went on, of course, to do great things, including being the boys in the Oaks and then being the boys in the Haskell in 2009. And Samantha Nicole also wasn't a bad horse. She went 2 for 10 in her career. So back to the race, we just go up here and close those lifetime PPs and go back to PPs and look at Fayette, the number 9, and it should switch back. If it does it, we'll go to the horse directly. There's Fayette, and ran very well. Broke 7th and made a nice steady bid here, going from 5 back to a length back. Rosario Road, riding back. Fayette 4-1 to start, and Time to Travel is 8-1 to start, even though they were separated by a length. And they're both very interesting plays. Now, for first-time starter with pedigree, there's a horse here named Portal, and there's an angle here I have set up, which is dam with a first-time starter win a dirt sprint. So I told this story many times to people. I used to look at horses one by one and use the Equibase pedigree stats and Stats Central and look at every start and find a first-time starter. Now it comes to me. So this reminds me to look at this horse, and if I go to the dam Silent Street, I will go to the same thing, first-time starters. I will see the horse has 3 poles run, and one of them won first time out. So I could look at that horse named Street Song. I could see it was a maiden special, 6 furlong, and it was a very nice effort. Won her second start as well. So going back to Portal here, who has another nice morning line of 15-1. Ian Wilkes riding Leparoux. What's very interesting to note, by the way, and I forgot to go this when I went back to Silent Street, was one of the things I found very interesting when I looked at that siblings, same dams. I looked at that horse, Street Song. I noticed also it was bred by Janice Witham, owned by Witham Thoroughbreds, and trained by Ian Wilkes. And you'll notice when you go back to Portal here, it's the exact same connection of bred by Witham, owned by Witham, trained by Ian Wilkes. Now, Wilkes himself is not that prolific with first-time starters, 9% on 46, but just recall, he's done it with a horse from the same owner breeder and also the same dam. And the other horse, of course, to round out of the ones that have run is the favorite Meantime, who ran second after setting the pace to Patch, who's running the Louisiana Derby, and that's a logical horse you've got to use. So the 4 horses to look at here in this maiden race, 3 based on pedigree and form, time to travel, Portal, Fayak, and Meantime. I know Craig has something to mention here about Meantime.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Meantime is a standout in this race. Basically because when you look at that Equibase speed figure of 102, when it's green and circled like that, you know it's the highest in the field. The way that I use the speed figures a lot of times to see how a horse fits in a race is I compare it to the class rating of the race. So whenever up in the race header, we have it labeled as CR below the distance, and so you see it's a 95 here. So that kind of tells you what the winner is probably going to run to win this race. So if you see horses that are around that number, or if they have speed ratings, Equibase speed figures much faster than that, then you know they're very strong plays. And so the 102 compared to the 95 makes this horse look really good. You can even see the pace figures. Ellis has the running line set up so that instead of the running times, there's pace figures, and the 104 and 100 are also higher than the 95. So that horse ran a great race first time out, and so if it can run anywhere near that number, it's going to be tough to beat. Also, the one other aspect I liked is this trainer, Brian Lynch, with today's jockey, Jose L. Ortiz. You look at, even though it's only 13 starts, you see the 38% win percent and the 932 payoff on the $2 ROI, which is a 366% return on investment. And so, with both of those things going, because we know he uses that jockey, there is a jockey switch in these types of situations. This horse just is a standout for me, and I would key other horses around it, and that's the way to go.
Very nice. Some nice ideas. And the 7-8, this is a good group. 6th race, the maiden special, Gulfstream. Let's press forward and get our first stake conversation. The Gulfstream Oaks. And this race is, especially with the circumstances around Unique Bella, both the Fairground Oaks, the Santa Anita Oaks, this race, they're all going to be watched closely, given the uncertainty now that Unique Bella seems unlikely to participate in the Kentucky Oaks. Now let's start the conversation. Ellis.
Sorry about that. Summer Luck here, the 3, was kind of interesting to me to start off the conversation as a horse that is on the improve. She had a little bit of trouble in her last start, and of course, whenever you see that, even though it doesn't have the little triangle here that she had trouble 3 back, but it does say altered and gaining, and so anytime you want to look at that, you could validate it, but you could see she finished pretty nicely, 5th, 4th, 3rd, beaten 3/4, just beaten ahead for 2nd by Jordan Kenny and Miss Sky Warrior, who's not back in this race. So really, these are the 2 contenders running back here. And Summer Luck ran well at 7 furlongs. She should really appreciate the added distance. There is an angle I had that all of a sudden has kind of disappeared, but I'll go back and find it under my angles. It was there earlier today, but as things change, sometimes those angles do go away. So to check that, I can go back to the main here and check on my managed angles. And there's an angle I have written down called Sprint to Route 3-year-old Stakes. So again, for some reason it wasn't there. Sprint to Route 3-year-old Stakes, and it highlights it here. And I can take a look at it and see what the test for the results of last year was. So this is when today's race is a route, and the last was a sprint, and it's a graded stakes for 3-year-olds only. You can see this came up 74 times in the last year with 149 starts. For the last 6 months, and this is key because the last 6 months, of course, will go back to October. So you're talking about the end of the 2-year-old campaign when the 3-year-old preps, 2 and 3-year-old preps start. There have been 67 starters, and they've won 15% of the time. The success score about 5.9. I think Craig will comment might be about average. But if you bet all of these horses, you had a 42% return on investment on that angle. So to go back to the PPs for Summer Luck in race 11, and just scroll down to that, and I can go right to her. It brings up the whole race, but we'll go right to her here in a second. And so you can see this is that angle because that is really a one-turn race. So I count it as sprint to a route, and she ran very well. Now you'll notice also trainer Mark Cassey, even though Woodbine starts in a couple weeks, is bringing down his main rider Patrick Husband. They have a lot of success together, 22% wins in the last year. So there's some nice angles here, and that 90 figure is tied for the best figure for a horse in the race. So she's on an improving pattern. It looks pretty good here. The next one, of course, is the favorite, Salty, and 9-5 favorite coming off a nice maiden win with a 96 figure, which shows right here is the highest Equibase speed figure, not only for the horse, but for any horse in the race. So she looks like a horse. It's also trained by Mark Cassey. So it's kind of an uncoupled entry here, but she'll be 9-5, but certainly an angle. And that best last speed figure in the field, certainly one to look at. And she's by Quality Road. I didn't look at the pedigree, but we all know Quality Road did his best running around 2 turns. So I don't have much of a concern of her doing better around 2 turns. The third one, in my opinion, here is the 8, Jordan Tenney, and the reason, the 7, I mean, 5, I'm sorry, Jordan Tenney. And Jordan Tenney is a horse that, again, ran very well in that same race with Devona Dale. She was off from December to March, almost 3 months. Came back, pressed the pace, held second very well, beating Summer Luck by a head. I like it when a horse's last speed figure before the layoff was equal on the next one. It's the same thing you would do if you're looking at performance figures. A horse should bounce up off of that figure, and a new top or a new best should come up today. So Jordan Tenney, certainly a contender in this race. So my main choices here in the Gulfstream Park Oaks are the 7, Summer Luck, the 5, Jordan Tenney, and the 6 horse, Salty. And I know Craig had a comment on a couple horses as well.
Yeah, so for me, my top pick is number 7, is the Nona Bella. And so this, I don't know, Ellis, can you turn on the track bias? I didn't notice, but you have it off for the running lines. If you customize the PPs.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, just turn the track bias on.
So right. So I have to go into my PPs for this template, which is my Equibase lifetime PP, and go down here. I just turn on track bias, check it off, and save it, and it'll automatically apply it. And then when the PPs will automatically regenerate, for those who don't know, you have to do much at all. and then the track bias will appear for, we're looking at Nona Bella, right? Number
yeah,
7?
we're looking at number 7. Yeah, so we're there.
Okay,
So
Ellis,
right. So Ellis showed you how you can turn the track bias on and off. And so when you look at the first race of its career for Nona Bella, the first letter always means the running style bias. So if it's an N, that means there was no bias. If it's an F, it means it favored front runners, and S means a stalking trip was favored on the track that day, and then a T means trailers were winning, so horses that were at the back of the pack. You hardly ever see a T because in America there's hardly any tracks that favor closers. I mean, it's once in a while that you ever see anything like that. So most of the time you're going to see an F for a front running track. If the bias is really strong, you'll see a plus. So you would see an F plus, or once in a while you would see an S plus, but it's almost as rare as a T track. The second, after the slash, the second part tells you what part of the track was favored. So if there's an N, that means there was no bias. An R is a rail bias, and M means the 2 or 3 path. The middle of the track was favored. And if you see an O, that'll be an outside bias. So those are the things that you look for with the track bias. So you see in its debut that Nona Bella, that the horse went wire to wire, and so on that day, horses with that kind of trip were at a disadvantage. And so the horse ran a 96 speed figure, which is the same figure that Salty's run both times. And so when the horse, even though it won its second race, the speed rating regressed to an 88. So this is one thing that the theory that I believe in is that when a horse runs well against the bias, the next start you can kind of discount. Like I expect them to not do as well, not earn a speed figure as well as that first time that they came out. So this horse I expect to improve a lot. So I would look for something in the 100 range. Wouldn't surprise me in the start today for that type of race. So I just want to point out that type of angle because it's one that people don't always look at, and it's a way to take advantage of the track bias. And then the other horse I like is the one that Ellis said, the favorite, Salty. I mean, it lost by a head to Nona Bella first time out, came back with another 96. I mean, those are both very strong Equibase speed figures for first 2 times out in these maiden special weight type races. So that horse I would expect to run well again. So unfortunately, no long shots in this race for me, but I'm going to try to key Nona Bella more just because I'm expecting an improvement because of running against the track bias that first time out.
That's the Kentucky, the Gulfstream Oaks, and gets us to the feature. And the more you look at this edition of the Florida Derby, it feels like that Gunnevera is going to have to misfire considerably to not win. And I'm interested in hearing, Ellis, how you want to approach this, because the assumption here is that Gunnevera should be odds on in this field. The likelihood, of course, is that Battalion Runner will be scratching and waiting for either Arkansas or for New York. Gunnevera 9-5, and he'll be half that price.
Yeah, I mean, the Battalion Runners was interesting. You try and keep the favorite for betting purposes. Even though Battalion Runner looked like a good contender, he actually had a higher Equibase speed figure. You see Gunnevera had a 107, and even though he's probably going to scratch, Battalion Runner had 109, to try and keep the favorites separated for betting purposes, so it does affect things. But I had a couple price horses anyway, but let me talk about the obvious first. Gunnevera had traffic trouble here in the Holy Bull. He wasn't going to be Irish Warcry, who did regress badly in the Fountain of Youth. I liked the way Gunnevera ran on in the Fountain of Youth, passing the other 2 horses once he got clear of them for second, even though, again, he wasn't going to beat Irish Warcry. And when Castellano rode him a lot differently, keeping him out of trouble in the Fountain of Youth, as you can see, he made that move from 5th to 1st and just blasted off and earned a career best 107 Equibase speed figure. He closed from, I was going to show it, but, we just know the kind of kick he has. He was actually further back in the PPs. When we turned on the bias, we lose the first call, but he was 13 lengths back, and then he just continually rallied. And the pace was just average, 47, 112. He may not see the same kind of pace here. There's not a lot of speed, particularly Italian runner out, but Three Rules has a lot of gas. Always Dreaming could have some speed, and State of Honor takes blinkers off, so I don't think he's going to show the kind of speed. What's also very interesting here is, as once a horse runs a few times, it's not as important, but I can't remember, it was a friend or somebody told me, take a look at Dialed In, because, he was a decent horse as a 3-year-old. And one of these angles early on, and one of the reasons I was following Gunnevera last summer, was the Dialed In. I have this angle Dialed In, progeny and dirt routes, and you'll see real quick, and the green, by the way, meant it was profitable. This is almost a no-brainer bet, by the way. If you bet all the sons and daughters that Dialed In and dirt routes in last year, you'll see a 21% win percentage and 28% ROI. Now, you may just not want to randomly bet them, Steve and Craig and all the people listening out there, but certainly you're going to take a look at every one of them, because there's something in the pedigree here that suggests that his sons and daughters run really well. Well, if you all remember, he was a deep closer too, like Gunnevera, but that's a very interesting stat for me, so I always keep an eye on that. Now, a couple interesting angle horses for me, and again, I wish Italian Runner was in so I get a little more value. As you said, Steve, that the Gun Runner is going to be a heavy price, but Impressive Edge is an intriguing horse here. You can see here, and I always like looking for these things like scratches or other things or private barn changes. You can see his first 2 races last year, both sprints, Churchill and Saratoga. He ran 6th. He gave a lot of time off to mature here between July and January. They moved him to Dale Roman's barn, who has him now. And his first race back was a huge effort, sprinting. And then they decided to put him in a swale, and he kind of ranged up, but then got tired. But, man, his next time out was a pip. Now, it wasn't as good as this, but he's on an upswing again. And what's interesting about this race, I'm going to show the video because I wanted to see this Trackman's comment. Our guys at Gulfstream are phenomenal. They include former Racing Form writer and handicapper Dave Liffman, who was awesome. And he writes notes for about half the races at Gulfstream, for those that don't know. He is phenomenal. And I want to go back and look at this race, and I'm going to make everybody watch it with me because I want to show you something really intriguing about how Dale Romans, I think, trains his horses. I'm going to mute sound here, but if you can watch this horse, Impressive Edge, who is going to break from the rail, and he's got these purple and white silks. And on this view, you're going to see the horse wants to go, and he has actually got the lead briefly. And Lannery is going to just not wrangle him back, but let him totally relax. But everybody go by him. And we're going to watch the whole thing here because this is what I look for in 3-year-old races. It's horses that are kind of getting it, having the light bulb go on. And he's moving up a little bit on his own. And this is really intriguing for me because these 2 horses in front are going, okay, they're going 23 flat almost for 7 furlongs, the 2 on the lead. And you can see that he's still 5th right now, Impressive Edge. And at some point, Lannery is going to take him outside just a little bit as they're battling. And he makes this, I wouldn't say explosive, but without being asked, you could see him just moving up on his own completely. He knows exactly what his job is here. And from this position, he's just going to run by him. I don't think Lannery ever moves the whip off the reins. He might show me here, and he's going to blast off to an 8-length win. Now, we don't need to see the rest of this. He's going to just run off on this field. But what's intriguing when we come back to him here is his figures are nowhere near the 107, 104, 105 of Gunnevera. But we've seen Romans do this kind of thing before with a horse. And I like this a lot, going from 7 to 9 furlongs, particularly this kind of a horse. And you've got some angles here. You've got a Sprinter Route 3-year-old stakes, who I might have mentioned earlier, but I'll go back to this angle. This is the one that over the last 6 months has been very profitable for these 3-year-olds. stakes races really just the first 3 months of this year, and also the end of last year for the 3-year-olds that hadn't gone long yet. That was one angle. The other race lens angle, which is applicable here, was this horse for course Gulfstream angle. I've got two. I believe one of them. They're slightly different, so I have to remind myself here. This wasn't the one. It was the other one. There's a slight nuance to them. This one here, the horse for course at Gulfstream. This is an angle which tells me a horse that's won more than half its race at Gulfstream. So he's 2 for 3. Oh, this was the right one. 2 for 3 in his career at Gulfstream. And even though it's a lot of races, they actually beat the track takeout with a very nice success score. It's 37, 51% in the money, and almost 25% win. So horses that really like Gulfstream tend to continue to run well at Gulfstream a lot. So there's some stuff here at 12 to 1 to make this horse very interesting. And the fact that Lannery, who's the main winning rider for the barn, is also riding back 23% wins with a $2.20 return for a $2 bet. The other one that makes this interesting is going to be the one State of Honor. And the first thing I noticed was that he had blinkers in his last 2 races, and he ran very well early. It just apparently the blinkers either kept him from seeing horses that were coming, or maybe just didn't cause him to focus a lot. Certainly a horse that could use the blinkers off. If you look back here to his win, his maiden win came without the blinkers, and then he ran second at 1.8 miles on the Topeka last fall at a stake, a $250,000 stake, without the blinkers. So I think taking the blinkers off is going to help. Now, here's an intriguing stat. If you check, I wanted to see how Mark Casse does with this kind of thing, and I went to look at the statistics for Mark Casse with blinkers off and routes. I'm not sure I saved it, but I'll show you how I did it real quick. The default statistic was past 2 years, 8 to 30 days on dirt, because that fits the situation. But with just a few clicks here, I can check this to dirt and change it to all starters and change it to routes. And then I want to check with blinkers off, which is down here. So it's going to be a switch to blinkers off because he had it on before. And I'm not saving, I'm just going to apply it. And what's intriguing here is Casse is very good with this move. He's got 3 wins, 2 seconds, and a third from 7 starters. Only 1 starter off the board with the moves with going from blinkers off. The last thing I want to point out about State of Honor is if you notice something here, they're keeping some pretty good company. He got beat by Tappert when he was third. McCracken won the Sam Davis, and then he got beat by Tappert in the Tampa Bay Derby. Well, there's no Tapperts in here. And so this is the other one. So my picks really in this race, assuming Battalion Runner is going to wait, are going to be Gunnavera, Impressive Edge, and State of Honor. But I have no problem betting, as Steve, you talked about how to strategize and bet this race. I have no problem betting both State of Honor and Impressive Edge to win, and then just playing a 3-horse exacta box relatively heavy with these 3 horses. I know Craig's got to say chime in here, and I'll show on that. Before that, though, I know one of our listeners been asking about Always Dreaming. My comment on this race, on some of the content I put out today, is to use Always Dreaming in second and third. I think he's got a good shot. His Equibase speed figures are very nice. He runs a little close to the pace. As I said earlier, you've got a possible pace issue here with 3 Rules, who also likes to run on the lead, and something we can check really quick. You can see he likes to run. We can go to True Odds, and we can get a sense for the pace of the race, and it does show Battalion Runner in front who's now going to be out. State of Honor is taking blinkers off, so I'm not sure he's going to be there, but then you do have Always Dreaming and 3 Rules next. So those could easily be the 2 horses that are battling on the lead. But I wouldn't talk the person who asked about Always Dreaming off the horse at all. Fletcher, Johnny V, he regressed a little on his Equibase speed figure, but he's very consistent. This is his first stakes, where State of Honor and Impressive Edge, even though he ran 4th at both stakes credentials, as does Gunnavera. So now that I've mentioned Always Dreaming, I'm going to go to Craig and talk about Battalion Runner and Gunnavera.
Yeah, so with Battalion Runner, really, I just want to give out an angle more than the horse in this race. So if you scroll down to the workouts, Ellis, you can see that when horses start running these distances, a mile and an eighth and longer, I really like a training pattern of 5 furlong or 6 furlong or longer workouts, like every 7 days. So you see this horse worked on March 25th, March 18th, March 11th, March 4th. I mean, right? It's like clockwork. 5 furlongs, 6 furlongs, 5 furlongs, 5 furlongs. When horses like this start working out this way, you know that the trainer's putting in a strong foundation. And at these distances, you know, the fitness level is going to be right there. And even though this horse, you know, hasn't faced these types of horses before, you know, when he does get into the stakes level, if he keeps on this workout pattern, I mean, he's going to be fit and he's going to be ready to run his best. I mean, Todd Pletcher is going to make sure of that. So I just wanted to point that out to people to look for those types of workouts in these types of races. And then just getting back to Ganavera, I mean, the horse won so easily last time. You know, triple-digit Equibase speed figures 3 in a row. I mean, the horse is going to be tough to beat. And, you know, I think it basically you just want to try to put some other horses like the ones Ellis mentioned around him and try to do something that way to make a score.
Steve, is there anything that you had interest in that we didn't mention to take a quick look at here in the Florida Derby?
You know, I've kind of struggled with figuring out what I want to do in terms of structuring a play. You got 3 horses in this race that are really extraneous, that you know, that have the potential just to kind of get in the way. I mean, horses like Charlie the Greek and Quientos and Coleman Rocky. I mean, these are allowance horses, and they really have no business being involved. They only serve to push 3 rules and Ganavera further out than they needed to be. Instead of giving a field of 7 equal chances in the gate, you know, now 3 rules probably is the most compromised. You know, by being out in what's going to be the 9-hole once Battalion Runner scratches. Ganavera is not as badly compromised because Castellano will find a place before the turn to save ground and come with the rally later. You know, the questions you've got to ask are on, you know, you bring up Impressive Edge, and I implicitly trust Dale, but this horse, from a pedigree standpoint, there's some mixed signals about whether 9 furlongs is going to be to his liking. That's my one problem. To me, the horse that he reminds me of is another Dale Romans overachiever. For those that remember Sharp Humor, and Sharp Humor ended up being famous for finishing closest to Barbaro in the races that Barbaro completed. He gave Barbaro the biggest challenge of his career, and that, to me, he's kind of what Impressive Edge looks like to me, a horse that is ultimately going to be better around 1 turn. So that kind of leaves me with dealing with Todd Pletcher and the horse of Eddie Please's. Talk logistics. And he's another one that, you know, I just keep looking at this field and everybody looks like horses that, you know, that once these futile efforts at Derby runs are over, they'll be cutting back to more appropriate middle distance assignments. I was a State of Honor fan going into the Sam Davis. He certainly ran credibly. He's another horse that the barn has said from day one they really never expected him to be a 2-turn horse. So they're giving him every chance, but I can't find a horse other, I suppose, than Always Dreaming, who makes any real sense going 1 mile and an eighth, other than the favorite. And so, from that reason, it's an interesting race because of what it's going to produce, but I find it a very cumbersome wagering exercise. I think that, you know, for me, it's going to end up just being, you know, the anchor leg on multi-race plays.
I will add one thing. You mentioned the impressive edge and one-turn horse, and this is what makes handicapping so great, that, you know, we have differences of opinions. But I will just mention, I don't know if I've said it in previous webinars, that people that listen to me when I do things at Cumulus, that's one of the favorite things I've discussed many times with Jude when I was doing the radio show with Mike and Jude and all that, is there's been a tremendous angle, and I've yet to actually done the angle, and believe it or not, all the work I've done in Racelands, I haven't done it yet, but going from 7 to 9 furlongs has always been a very interesting angle for me. Something about, you know, 1 furlong further than the basic distance of 6 and a mile. And these horses tend to run very well. So I have to tell you, I'm still pretty high in impressive edge. We'll have to see if I'm right, and certainly I respect you very much. And you could be right. You could definitely, at the end of the race, Dale could say, we're going back to 1 turn, boys.
Hey, there's a mixed signal here, because being by the Grand Slam mare, the Dam, there's also a sibling that was by Giant's Causeway, who was very accomplished around 2 turns. So there's a real mixed message here in terms of this family. And, you know, there have been horses that, and also with pedigrees that succeeded going long on the grass, which is a big stamina signal. I trust Dale. I mean, when it comes to this, and certainly a racetrack like Gulfstream that'll help carry speed, you know, is certainly a place to, you know, for a stretch out candidate. I keep looking at these horses, and there's nobody grabs me as a major player behind Gunnevera. That I just,
I agree.
I ultimately
really step it up.
Yeah, it's a much different when we get to Fairgrounds, where you've got a bunch of candidates, and of course that long stretch going the 1 1/8 might make a big difference. Let's talk about the Louisiana Derby and go right from the Florida Derby to Fairgrounds, and we'll talk about some other stakes. But let's start at Ellis with your thoughts on Gervin and the Louisiana Derby.
Well, again, you know, Gervin for me, I think it was discounted a little bit going into the Risen Star based on the fact that it was a turf race he came out of. But, you know, that's what's great about, I'm not, you know, any speed figure, but the Equibase speed figure pointed out he had one, of course, on dirt, but the Equibase 97 figure was very competitive coming into the Risen Star, and he ran a new best race. Brian Hernandez, of course, rode him very well. He did get the benefit of a decent pace that kind of melted down on him against him, and he won off pretty well and got a career best 102 Equibase speed figure. He made the strong move in the race from going from 4th, 5 back to a half a length in front, and did very well, not challenged. Before the race, I mentioned, and I'll mention it again, you know, one of the things I look at, particularly when I'm looking at a horse trying something for the first time, and it was his first dirt route, was I went to look at the Dam, and I'll just quickly go back and remind everybody, you know, what I saw that day, which was the Dam first-time starters. I could do it that way, but his only sibling was Cocked and Loaded. For those who don't remember, Cocked and Loaded won the Tremont sprinting, and then won the Iroquois as a 2-year-old at a 1:16 to Churchill. Didn't do a whole lot after that, so allowance races, and then retired. He might actually be in training again. He's run as recently as February, but certainly that was one of the reasons I thought Gervin could do well on the dirt, and he did. Also, you know, the way he runs with his style, according to the pace, looking at the True Odds pace projection, obviously you're going to have some speed here with the 5, Monaco, with blinkers on, who would press the pace last time out in the maiden race. You're going to have some speed here with the 3, and you can sort here on the running style we talked about here with Local Hero, and the 9, Hot Foot. So I think for sure, especially if you go back to the PPs and you can take a quick look at Hot Foot, and you can see from the outside, obviously they're going to send him. He's had the lead at the first call his last 4 races. Local Hero 3 has had the lead. That does put Gervin in a great spot. And like Gunnevera, you know, as Steve, as you mentioned, he's going to be a favorite. He's opening at 8-5. The horse on the rail shipping in for Fletcher, very interesting here at Patch. We talked about who had an angle with the horse that ran second meantime running in that maiden race, which are going to come up earlier, so we'll see if that validates it. But He's done nothing wrong. He went from 78 to a 105 figure with a one-turn mile. Fletcher, for those who don't remember, has done great with these shippers. He shipped in one liner to win the Southwest. Malik is here to win the Rebel. Certainly, it's very good. It's the best figure in the field for the horse and the race. Union Rags, so again, a relatively new sire. I just wanted to double check on Union Rags. This really is his first two-turn race, Patches. So I went to Union Rags and looked at this, which is dirt, second route, maiden winner, but I'm going to modify it to more, I call situational, to today. Now we're going to look at dirt, we'll look at routes, and you could do this really quickly, as I said. You could do stakes races. So we're going to go to class, and we're going to just go to all stakes, which is down here, and change that up. And we'll see Union Rags sons and daughters, and it's very quick looking at all this data for those who don't already know. Just one win, but a couple nice seconds. The one win with stakes was in last year's Alcibiades, coming off a one-turn mile at Laurel and winning the Alcibiades at 12-1. So that was very intriguing for me. So it gave me some reason to really like Patch, besides the fact that he gets the rail and it's Fletcher. The one long shot real quick to talk about here is the 4 senior investment. And again, this is similar to the horse we talked about of Romans in the Florida Derby. The Equibase figures are low compared to Gervin's 102, but the pattern is good. He won his DQ'd 86-90, but Ken McPeak, and for those who have been following the 3-year-olds recently, just an incredible hot hand in these stakes. And I'll pull this up really quick. You could do this really simple. You can look at age and look at 3-year-olds only, and stakes races, all starters, and class of stakes races. And I'm going to just reduce it to the last 90 days because I wanted to make sure that my memory was good, because sometimes it's not that great. So we're just going to go to the past 90 days, and you'll see something. Talk about Fletcher. McPeak has really been spotting his horses well. And I'll sort on the top finishes here. These horses ran 1-2 last week. Actually, this one ran Purely a Dream, won the Bourbonette. Blue Race Traveler ran second in the Spiral. He's had some nice runners in this. So just looking for a price here. Senior investment, all of a sudden the light bulb went off, won 3 in a row, and I think the horse is interesting. So I'll go with those 3. Gervin, Patch, and Senior investment. Local Hero and Guest Suite are good for exotics, but I want to give Craig some time here, and you, Steve, as well, to talk about a couple horses real quick. And then I'm going to flip back to an angle on a long shot called Sorry Eric, who talked earlier about Sonneteer. I don't want to forget about him. But Craig, why don't you kick off your comments here?
Yeah, can you give me the screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We got it. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, I can. You want to?
Okay.
Paul.
Okay, sure. So what I just wanted to show is one of the things we wanted to show in this webinar, and Ellis has been talking a lot about the siren dam, some different ways that he's shown users how we can look at those aspects. I just want to show one way, an easy way to get a screen to compare sires, dams, even the trainer or jockey in a certain way. And the way I'm going to do is show you with the sires here. So in a race, doesn't matter which horse you want. If you click on the sire for any horse, so in this race with Patch, we just click on Union Rags. And in these types
Craig,
of
do the
yeah.
F11 thing, you could make it bigger.
Yeah, I have it. It's already on F11.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you when we bring up this will bring up the individual research for the particular horse, and so I'm gonna set the filters to a certain aspect that I'm going to look at today. So for these types of big stakes races or other certain specialty types of instances, I want to set certain filters that I'm going to compare the whole field. So when I click on the modify button for these types of races, like big stakes races at different tracks, I want to see how the offspring of that sire does at that particular track. So all I do is I hit the reset button, so everything gets reset. So when you hit the reset button for a sire like this, the time frame will reset the past 5 years, nothing else. No other filters are selected. So you just change use all tracks to use today's track, and then hit apply. So this shows union rags in the past 5 years, horses that have raced at the fairgrounds. And so to compare, you can see that none of the horses have won, and 3 have finished in the money. So if I click on the show all button, then that's going to take all the horses, so all the sires in today's race, and it's going to show how their horses have done how their offspring has done at the fairgrounds. And so normally I would just sort on the return on investment. And so when we look at that, you can see that Tapazar has the best, plus 51% return on investment, and Quality Road has plus 33% return on investment. The other sire that looks strong is Televacati, because the win percent is 24%, but the ROI is not quite as good because they're popular horses, so it's only a +8 ROI. But in this field, the 2, 6, and 8, based on sire, how their offspring run at the fairgrounds, those are the horses that meet that criteria that look good. So you can do that for dams, for trainers or jockeys. I mean, I know Ellis likes to use this feature when there's a lot of first-timers in a race. Instead of to have to go horse by horse, you just would set the filters to past 5 years, first-time starters, and then you can look at all the horses in the race, how the sires have done with first-time starters, and the ones that are first-time starters, you just know to make a note, and you can compare, who in the field of the first-time starters has the best statistics and looks promising. So I'm going to go back to the PPs now and just kind of go over the horses that I like in this race. So one of the ones that we talked about that looked good as far as the sire, Quality Road, had the plus 33% ROI, was number 6, Guest Suite. One of the other things I like about this horse is I always look at the true odds. When I bring up the true odds for this type of race, when I sort on the true odds, we see that Guest Suite is the top selection. It's highlighted in yellow because the 2-to-1 odds is what the odds should be according to Stats Race Lens on the adjusted true odds based on all the factors in this race. But the morning line odds are 4-to-1. So whenever the morning line odds are higher than the adjusted true odds, those horses are going to be highlighted because they're possible bets. This changes the day of the race because the live odds will come to play, and that'll be compared to the live odds. But right now, before the race, the best estimate we have is the morning line odds, and so that's why it's based on that until the live odds start coming in. So this horse looks like it's going to be an overlay. It had the good sire, and also when you look at the speed figures that it ran, the horse ran the 101 speed figure, which is the same as, like I mentioned previously today. I like to look at Equibase speed figures and compare them to the class rating, and the class rating is 101. This horse ran that race 2 races back. He ran a speed figure that fits with today's race. I mean, the only kind of question mark is that was a sealed muddy track, so maybe the horse responds to that. That's kind of the question mark on why that could be a little bit of of a question mark, but I still think that horse is a strong horse. Another horse I like is the number 1 Patch. Ellis gave you reasons why he likes the horse. I like that again, when the Equibase speed figure is green and circled, that means it's the highest, and the mouse over will tell you as well. That's the highest Equibase speed figure in this race. It matches that, and so those are my top 2 selections in this race. I mean, I do think Local Hero is a solid play, and then of course Gervin is the obvious horse, but for me, those types of horses, it's the old saying of, if you didn't go to the wedding, don't show up for the funeral. So, I mean, Ellis picked this horse last time. The odds were juicy last time. I mean, that's when you really needed to bet him. And, I mean, he may or may not regress this time. He's probably going to still run well, but it's just there's no value there. And so for me, I'd rather try to take a shot with a guess suite and use Patch as well, and that's what I'm looking at for this race. And then in the exotics, I am going to throw in that number 2, just because of the Sire Tapizar. When we looked at how horses do at the Fairgrounds, I mean, his offspring do well. I mean, this horse, out of his 3 tries at the Fairgrounds, this horse has a first and a third, and so he is responding to this track. He could improve even more, and so that's the horse that I would throw in my exotics at a price. That's how I see this race.
Hey, so Craig, switch to Eric real quick. I want to talk about that really cool angle that already had a winner earlier today. The Stats Raceland Twitter account, for those that don't follow it, should follow at Raceland, tweeted out this angle, which I discovered last year, is when Kent rides for Keith in dirt routes, and it had a $7 winner today. Of course, last week it was Richard Arabia for DeSormo at 99-1, but go ahead and click on that angle and let's look at how nice this is done in the past year when Kent rides for his brother Keith in dirt routes. And, that happens all over the country. It doesn't occur a lot, 46 times, but 30% wins. So almost 15 for 46 with 67% in the money, almost a 9 success score. Craig, you can talk about how big that is. And a 24% ROI. And sorry, Eric opens at 30-1. This is a horse that, if you switch back to the PPs, Craig, real quick, talk about that. Doug O'Neill had him initially, and Keith DeSormo claimed him 3 back for $20,000. Put him in an allowance optional claimer, left him in for the $75,000. Somebody could have bought him, and he won again. And then he put him in the Risen Star, and he didn't do a thing, the 10 post. But I just can't get off him for exotics. I know some people are going to be laughing, but if you were laughing last week at Sonic 2, you didn't cash. So I'm going to throw Sorry Eric. I'll probably bet $2 to win on him, and I'm going to use him underneath Gervin and Patch and senior investment in the exactas here.
He actually
he's
got a lot. He's got a lot to like as a candidate on that front, and there's no doubt, because DeSormo was considering running him next week in the Santa Anita Derby, and instead comes back here. He lost a tremendous amount of ground from the 10 hole in that Risen Star. The other horse that lost ground similarly in the Risen Star was Guest Suite, and they're both they're both interesting coming back. Robbie Alvarado cannot lose as much ground. To me, Guest Suite may be the key, because I think he's a horse whose price is going to gravitate up a little bit from that 4-1, because Pletcher is going to take money. Local Hero is something of a talking horse, it seems, coming into this. He's going to take money, and you know that Gervin is going to go favored. So I think there's a real chance here that Guest Suite ends up being the fourth choice, and in that case, they'll be north of 9-2 in the 5-1, 11-2 range, and I think that makes him a very prime, kind of a key horse, a horse you play with in the top 3 slot, and you can feather in the others that you like. This is a much more fun betting affair. It ends the All Stakes pick 4. It starts the Black Gold got hit last Saturday, shockingly. This was going to be a force out on the Black Gold on Saturday, but the pot is gone. It should be a very entertaining affair. There's a chance here that Calumet could put another horse in the Derby if Patch runs, first or second. Suddenly they've got Hence from last week. Sonneteer is going to run back. There's a chance that Calumet Farm, Resurgent, could have 3 horses in the Derby from 3 different outfits. It's a pretty amazing story. Let's slip in the Oaks, guys. We got a couple of minutes, and we did lose the first 3 minutes, so we'll be able to do the Fairgrounds Oaks, which goes as race 11. And Craig, talk a little bit about how you're going to approach this.
Yeah, so when I looked at the true odds of this race, and the first thing that really stood out to me was that in the true odds, the team at Stats has put together the algorithm that tries to lay out the pace, and it shows that the number 2 Daria's Angel, the 5 Vexatious, and the number 6 Farrell are going to pretty much dominate this race from start to finish. So I don't always go by just what this is using an algorithm to project pace figures about what's going to happen. So I also look at the run style. So when we sort on this column, the E means that the horses have an early run style. A P means that the horses are presser, so they're usually going to be stalking just off the pace, and an S is a sustained style. So Farrell is the only horse with an early run style in this race, and so even though it looks like Daria's Angel and Vexatious will be running with them, I'm pretty sure he's going to have a 1 or 2 length lead with those 2 horses stalking close behind. So I just think that horse is going to have a decided edge on controlling the pace. So when I go back to the PPs, and we look at Farrell, we can see that the pace figures were 102.92, and that earned an Equibase speed figure of 98, went wire to wire. We can see the other races, it's on or close to the lead. So I just think that this horse has kind of got the others over a barrel just from a pace standpoint, and I think that's I know the horse is 8-5 morning line, but that is going to be a horse who's going to be very tough to beat. I do like the number 5 Vexatious. On the true odds, this horse was a nice overlay. So when we sort on these odds, on true odds, the top 3 horses all look the same: 5-2, 3-1, 3-1. That's basically the same odds. But of course, the morning line odds for Vexatious and Daria's Angel are 6-1. So that makes those horses an overlay versus Farrell's 8-5. If the 6 had didn't have what I think might be a decided edge on the lead with the run style, then I kind of would go with the 5 and 2 more. But just when I'm looking at the PPs and looking at those figures, I still kind of think the 6 might have them over a barrel, and so that's why I'm playing the 2 and the 5 with the 6 horse. And then just one other horse. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you finish up, then I'll fix mine in.
Yeah, just one other thing is the price horse I would throw in is number 3, Wicked Luck. This horse has a strong angle that Brendan Walsh, the trainer, when he uses Brian Joseph Fernandez Jr., they do well. You can see they have a plus 57% ROI. And the horses run, 89 Equibase speed figure 3 times in a row. It's not quite close enough to the 95, but I still just think that this horse is a good horse to throw in the exotics underneath. And so that's the way that I'm playing the race. Go ahead, Ellis.
So we're close. I've got 2 Daria's Angel, 4 Corporate Queen, and 6 Farrell. Daria's Angel, even though she went wire to wire, and I recognize the true odds angle, her pace figures, if you want to switch to Daria's Angel, the 2 real quick, I wanted to show the pace figures. She ran a 92.90.102, which to me says she doesn't need the lead. And if you look at her 2 sprints, she kind of came from off the pace in both of those. So she can let Farrell go and stalk. And that 102 Equibase speed figure, to see last time out, is the best last race figure in the field, better than Farrell's Rachel Alexandra speed figure. So I like Darius Angel here at a decent price at 6. The 4, Corporate Queen, if you look at that, this is a nice pattern. 2 7-furlong sprints into a route, a daughter of Colonel John. This also follows that angle of the 3-year-olds sprint to route in 3-year-old stakes, and Florence Giroux rides. And then Farrell, you can't knock because she has won 3 stakes in a row. So I'm going to bet Darius Angel probably to win, and box 246 here, be my picks in the Fairgrounds Oaks.
Want people to pull up, if you've got the access, of course, to the video, you want to see a troubled trip. Take a look at Vexatious. Here's a horse that Neil Drysdale brings back for her 3-year-old debut. And let's see, let's pick the spot. Against boys. He runs her against the boys. Not just any boys. Against Reach the World and Battle of Midway, who are going to be prominent next week in the Santa Anita Derby. Kent DeSormo rode her like a complete blockhead, having her bottled up and having her throttled the entire way. Then, when he decides, after he's wrangled her to last, he finally gives her a chance to run, and she comes flying at the end. If he can work out a better trip, and I would think that he should be able to sit behind the speeds, this is a filly that could absolutely explode, and with that stretch, blows past everybody and runs away. For her to be 6-1, the same as Majestic Quality, is ridiculous. And I think Vexatious is going to take money, because anybody that's a trip handicapper is going to be all over her after that fiasco at Santa Anita. I think she is absolutely not just a player, but this is a star in the making for Neil Drysdale. And you know, be aware that DeSormo had ridden for his brother, Majestic Quality, in the Rachel Alexandra, and yet here he is sticking with Drysdale, riding Vexatious. She's the poison pill in this. Farrell is absolutely legitimate, but you want to see a trip, take a look at Vexatious, going back to that allowance race against the boys.
Yeah, that's definitely that's definitely a good angle. And like I said, when you look at the True Odds and Racelands, I mean, that is the horse to play. So, I mean, nothing should stop people from playing that horse.
No, you get Hall of Fame jock, Hall of Fame trainer. This has been so much fun. It's going to be it went by in a blink, too. I want to thank everybody that joined us, and want to encourage everybody, a tremendous opportunity as we get into Triple Crown season, and the opportunity to buy a month's worth of Stats Raceland and enjoy 3 months worth. You get a quarter. Basically, you're saving $150 by getting 2 months for free. As Ellis mentioned, you should be following the Twitter feed, Stats Raceland. You can, of course, use it as an access for questions and anything you're encountering on the website, and the response will be nearly instantaneous. And offers, and there's daily angles and discussions of races as well. So follow Stats Raceland, follow Uber Capper as well, of course, and look forward in a couple of weeks, 2 weeks from tonight, we'll come back, and Craig and Dan Torgman and I will join you. We'll talk about the card to close out the Racing Festival of the South at Oaklawn. That should be tremendous fun as well as we inch closer toward the Derby. Thanks, everybody. The replay will be up very shortly at Equibase, and we look forward to talking to you again in 2 weeks. Best of luck this weekend.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Ellis.
Thank you. Thanks for joining, everybody.